The boys are back together. Jack is back from his vacation. The video version of the show has returned. And I don't know if we could have picked a better time for the two of us to be back once again to talk about the New York Mets baseball team. Welcome in another edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. Chris Schubert, Jack McKessie back with you once again to discuss this team. We're doing things a little differently. Normally we do series recaps. I think we just got to take this from the top and just do all of this in general. But before we dive into the Mets, their offense, Juan Soto not wanting to be here apparently, and Tyler McGill and the full Tyler McGill experience this weekend. Jack, welcome back, my friend. How was your trip? Good to see you.
Chris, I am okay. My trip was great. The thing is, if you can't tell, I'm a little ill still. I'm getting over some strep that I got on the trip back, which is always really fun. Still a little bit jet lagged as well from my time in Japan. Got to see some NPB baseball while I was out there. I attended a Yakult Swallows game in Tokyo.
How was that?
How was that? Hiroshima Toyo Carp. Electric experience. Like the fans there are. It felt more like an English Premier League soccer game than it did like an MLB game. Just in terms of like everyone was locked in on every pitch. The crowd pop for like a base hit was just like a goal was scored in a soccer game. So it was a really good time. And at the same time, I kept checking my phone, and it seemed like all I needed to do for the Mets to start losing was leave the country.
Yeah, so we're glad you're back. We're glad that you're back here and that maybe the winning will commence. It was interesting because you and I have been communicating. We've been texting throughout this time that I've been doing the solo shows, and it's been weird because of the time difference. It's made it kind of difficult for us to talk about the team, but we've checked in a couple of times, and we were originally going to do a pod after the Yankee series. You were back and you watched that whole series, but then you got sick and you were like, hey, can we just push and do a mega episode? And considering the state of affairs for the New York Mets, I think that was a good decision because we can talk about the individual games themselves if we want, if there's anything glaring from them. But overall, the story right now is the New York Mets offense is woefully inconsistent. And that might be the nicest way to describe it. Their situational hitting is bad. Juan Soto has been getting a lot of the headlines for his play, but it's basically been everybody the last couple of nights. And yes, they scored 5 runs in this last game against the Red Sox to make sure they didn't have a 4-game losing streak. I mean, the first 3-game losing streak of the year just got done. They avoided their first sweep of the season. But the story right now is the offense, because the pitching's been good enough, even though it hasn't been as sharp as it was at the beginning of the season. They are starting to give up some more home runs. But even then, they have gotten quality enough starting pitching more often than not to warrant victories. And the bats right now have just been cold. So, Jack, since you're back on the pod, I'll open it up to you wherever you want to take this with this offense, because it is the number one story right now.
I feel like things haven't changed too much from where we were a few weeks ago and to start the season, really, because the offense has always been, not always, at least since the start of the regular season, I should say, because we expected in the offseason that the offense is going to be the strong point of this team. But since the start of the regular season, the offense has been the weaker point, and the pitching largely had been able to carry through and create success for the Mets when the offense has been lacking because of how well the starting pitching situation was going, with Clay Holmes becoming kind of a breakout star. Griffin Canning has looked solid. McGill had an excellent April and March once again. Kodai Senga coming back. Like all of those things, the bullpen was phenomenal for the first couple months of the year. And once things started to go not poorly necessarily for the pitching, but just not quite as well as it had been going, once those small, tiny little cracks started to show and the offense still wasn't able to carry the load for any of that, for any of those issues, it really exposed the offense even more, because when you have Kodai Senga giving up only 3 runs in what is a shaky start for him this season, and the Mets can't do anything offensively to back him up there, it really exposes the offense further for being a detriment to the team's success.
Yeah, and you have a night where the starting pitcher for the other team gets thrown out before finishing 3 innings, and you're not able to do anything offensively. That's where it just becomes, this is a mental thing more than anything at this point. They're letting it get to them. And again, it's up and down the board. And I want to have the Juan Soto conversation, and because it's the story that won't go away with the struggles that he's had. But Pete Alonso's not hitting the way that he hit at the beginning of the season. We are all still awaiting postseason second half of last year Mark Vientos to be here. Brendan Nimmo has been off to a slow start. Francisco Alvarez is struggling. Luis Torrens is the better offensive catcher so far at this point of the season. Vientos' defense has forced Brett Beatty into the lineup. They're just not clicking on all cylinders right now. And they will. They're too talented not to. This is not going to continue for the remainder of the season. Francisco Lindor is going to start to hit the way we know he can hit. He did hit a home run in the finale of this series, which I thought was a really good sign. Pete Alonso will get back to, I don't want to say exactly the version we saw in April, because that does somewhat feel like a little bit of an outlier, but he will be better than the May version of himself. Perhaps this puts me on an island because everybody has been saying this. Juan Soto is going to be okay. Juan Soto is going to hit and be a productive baseball player. I know that might be a hot take right now in today's Mets land. I'm surprised by this, but Juan Soto worth the contract that was given to him by the New York Mets. And just like Carlos Beltran, just like Francisco Lindor, just like Mike Piazza, just like name a impactful Mets addition to their squad in their history, the guys struggle when they first get here. And struggle, go look at Juan Soto's Baseball Savant page if you need to understand what struggling looks like in 2025. Yeah, it's little things, right? It's just those little things, the situational stuff, the hitting with runners in scoring position. Can't tell you how many times they've had, first and second, nobody out, they don't get a run. First and third, one out, and you can't hit the sac fly. How often they get into these spots and it's a first pitch pop-up, a first pitch ground out, and you're just missing on these opportunities and you're not scoring enough runs. It doesn't matter how good Kodai Senga pitches. It doesn't matter how good Clay Holmes pitches. It doesn't matter how good or bad Tyler McGill pitches. If you aren't consistently scoring runs, you're just going to start stacking up losses, and that's what this team is currently doing right now.
Yeah, the runners in scoring position thing and the lack of clutch hitting or situational hitting, whatever you want to call it, is really what's killing this team right now, because there have been so many opportunities. If you just look at the stretch of May games, right, generally since I've been gone, I don't have the number of the games up right now, the full scores of each one, but it felt like more than half of those were by 1 or 2 runs, and all of them were where the Mets were batting like 1 for 8, 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position, where they didn't come through in areas where they could have and didn't turn around games that I hope down the road they'll be able to figure out. But when you're not hitting with runners in scoring position, when you're swinging at pitches outside the strike zone, or you're taking strikes in the strike zone and getting behind in the count early, what the Mets look like right now with runners in scoring position is really reminding me of how Brett Beatty looked in his first stint in the majors earlier this season. They're taking strikes, and then once they get behind in the count, they panic and start pressing. We talk about Pete Alonso and how he's been struggling lately. We talked for a month and a half to start the season about how good he looked at recognizing what balls were strikes, being able to lay off those down and away sliders that had been his kryptonite for years, his ability to lay off the inside sinkers and not get jammed and just focus on balls in the zone and do damage. Now we're seeing him press again and trying to hit those down and away sliders that continue to be his kryptonite. And it's kind of like every Met hitter is playing like Brett Beatty, where they're trying too hard. Like you said, Chris, it's a mental thing, and they're just hitting these balls into the ground or not damaging the pitches that they should be taking advantage of.
A 213 batting average with runners in scoring position. It's second worst in the National League. The only team worse is Pittsburgh. The only 3 teams that are worse: Pittsburgh, as I just mentioned, Baltimore, and Chicago. The Colorado Rockies, who fired their manager, are hitting better with runners in scoring position than the Mets. Their WRC plus with runners in scoring position is 87. That's good for 23rd in baseball. That's the number. It was the number last year when they were struggling in the first half of the season, and it is the number right now for a team that's 29-20 or 30-20 after winning yesterday through their first 50 games of the season. That's the number. That's the thing we circle, and they have to get better at this. And I know there is some talk, at least amongst the fan base on social media, of this idea of making a change with the hitting coach, and you can do that. You can champion that. You can think that that's the right decision. You can think that that may wake these guys up. You only can do that once, though, because once you make that change, what's the excuse then if they continue to hit 213 with runners in scoring position? Do I think the process is bad sometimes? Do I think the plan when they go up there isn't very good? 100%. I think there needs to be a better plan when these guys step into the box in these spots. But I'm always cautious against firing a manager, firing a coach, doing things like that, because if it doesn't work, if you do it and it doesn't work, this team has 112 games left to play. That's a long season to go if your offense is going to continue to struggle. So you better be sure, you better be right to make that decision. So the offense is a huge problem right now. And I don't know. I expect them to break out of it, right? I mean, they're not going to play this way for the remainder 112 games on the calendar, right? They're just not.
Right. I have three, I guess, takeaways from what you were talking about with the hitting approaches and the whole conversation that we're having right now about just general state of the offense. I think first and foremost, Juan Soto struggling in these situations are, I think, a big reason why people think that he's a bust of his 15-year contract right now, because he in particular has been brutal at coming through with runners in scoring position. I don't have the exact stats, but the numbers are not great. But when you look at the Yankees series, for instance, and he's taking his walks constantly, it's something he's been doing all season. He's been getting on base at a high rate. He's just not punishing baseballs the right amount, the amount that we expected when the Mets signed Juan Soto. He's not coming through with runners in scoring position like we expected when the Mets signed Juan Soto. So that's a big reason why this narrative is happening, is because of the struggles with runners in scoring position in general. Second, generally as a team, the batted ball luck has been brutal. Like, I don't know if it's a matter of opposing defenses playing guys correctly in the field in terms of their defensive alignment, but there have been some rockets over the last couple of series that have just ended up in gloves and resulted in outs, where I think we look at the course of 162 games, eventually some of those balls, some of those hard hit balls start to bounce the right way for the Mets. And especially with runners in scoring position, that has been the case where, I mean, I'm blanking on a specific example right now, but I feel like I saw so many balls that were hit like just in the range of a Yankee second baseman. He was able to get to it and throw out the runner at first and end any threat. So
how many great plays did DJ LeMahieu make in that series, where a ball that you think is going to get through for an extra, for at least a single, DJ's just knocking it down, right? Judge made a great diving play to rob a hit. I mean, the plays happen; they happen all over the place. Right. To put some numbers to what you're saying about Juan Soto, how about this? Amongst all of the Mets so far this season, he has a 24 WRC plus with runners in scoring position.
Yeah.
He's had 50 plate appearances with runners in scoring position, a 125 average, a 240 on base percentage, and a 225 slugging. There are only 3 players that have a worse WRC plus hitting with runners in scoring position. Those 3 guys, this is going to prove the point of why everyone's getting on Soto right now. Jose Azocar, Jose Siri, and Hayden Senger.
Mm-hmm.
Every other player on this roster, Luis Angel Acuna, Brett Beatty, Luis Torrens, Jeff McNeil, Tyrone Taylor, all hitting better with runners in scoring position than Juan Soto, at least from the metric WRC plus.
And that just goes back to what I was saying. Like, he's pressing, right? Like, that's just a clear sign that when runners get in scoring position, he feels like, as the $765 million man, that he needs to be the one to play hero and make something happen. And his approach is just worse in those situations. It's clear because of how many times. Look at his on-base percentage right now. It's 374. His OPS is still above 800. Like, he's getting on base. He's making things happen. It's just not in the situations that we want it to happen in and where he wants it to happen the most. I think that's just a mental thing right now. And over the course of a long season, over the course of a long contract, those numbers are going to return to career norms. And last thing I wanted to say about the offense and the general conversation we've been having, to kind of point or to build off of your point about firing the hitting coach. We did see at the end of this Red Sox series a change in philosophy, kind of, with how the Mets constructed their lineup. And that's kind of the more plastic thing, as far as like, you can do more to rearrange the lineup in a 162 game season. You can only fire the hitting coach once. And seeing Carlos Mendoza make that change, move Soto down to 3 and Pete to 4, move Starling Marte up to second and play left field.
We need to have I'm sorry, I need to stop you right there.
Yeah,
you can change the lineup.
To stop.
Yeah, you can change the lineup. You can make all of those tweaks. Starling Marte should never be put in a spot to get extra at-bats over the course of a baseball game. I'm sorry. Starling Marte was a great Met at the beginning of his tenure, but he is what he is at this point. He's a fourth outfielder. He's a break glass in case of emergency DH option. He is not the guy that he was throughout his entire career in Pittsburgh, in Miami, in Arizona, when he was what he was the first year he was here in New York. He is not your number 2 hitter that's always going to get on base and put the ball in play. He's not that guy anymore. And how many times, I know he had a great at bat against Garrett Crochet. The first at bat was excellent, 10 pitches. I get it. But how often do you see Starling Marte in a big spot or not in a big spot just stare at 3 pitches and go sit back down, or flail at a pitch after looking at the first 2, swinging at one 5 feet outside the zone and striking out?
Feels like I can't count him on 2 hands.
It's too often. It's too often that he does that. And so he cannot be your number 2 hitter. I get it. You were trying to spark things, lefty on the mound. I understand all of the analytic baseball reasons for doing so. It just can't happen anymore. It just can't.
Yeah, I like the idea of moving things around to the lineup. I think it needed to happen. I think things needed to change because they clearly hadn't been working of late. What I struggle with is I don't think Marte should ever be the 2 hitter for the reasons that you outlined. But I also struggle with, I don't know who else you would put in that spot behind Lindor and in front of Soto. My first thought was Mark Vientos, but he has had a rough season so far. My second thought was Brandon Nimmo, who has also had a rough season so far. And I don't know if his new approach as a less on-base guy, more power hitting attempt guy is a good fit for that 2 hole. I don't know if you want to move Pete up above Soto. Like, I just don't know what the other option is. I don't like Marte in that spot, but I don't know who else I would put there either.
I have a candidate, but in order for this candidate to make sense, you have to answer a really important question for me.
Okay.
The idea of moving Marte to the number 2 hole, what is the baseball reason behind that? Like, what are they trying to get out of their number 2 hitter? Because that's not put my best hitter second. Starling Marte is not the second, not the best hitter on the team, right? Soto was in that spot because Lindor gets on base. Now you have a run scoring opportunity. So this is more traditional. My first and second guys, they get on base, they set it up for 3, 4, 5, right? This is very old school baseball, right?
Yes. I think I know where you're going with this.
Could you put Luis Angel Acuna in the 2 spot?
That is where I thought you were going with this.
If you're going to do this, if you're going to go more old school and your number 2 hitter, and by the way, I don't think this is a good idea. Like, I'd like to marinate on it a little bit more. But if you're going to put Marte in there, you're telling me that you no longer think that you want the profile of the 2025 number 2 hitter. You're going more of like mid 2010s number 2 hitter.
Right.
If that's the case, Luis Angel Acuna, the speed, the ability to lay down a bunt, the ability to beat out an infield hit. He hits the ball hard. He can put the ball in the gap. That feels like everything you think Starling Marte could still be, Luis Angel Acuna currently is.
I don't hate it. The thing that gives me some pause is I have really enjoyed watching Luis Angel Acuna kind of be a spark plug on the bottom third of the lineup right now, where he's able to get on base. And then, I mean, I feel like they've talked about it on the broadcast several times. Every time he gets on base, whether it's by a walk or a single, it's almost like he hit a double because he's going to steal with his speed, and he's been successful so often that to have a guy in the 8 or 9 hole end up on second base for your Lindors, Sotos, and Alonsos makes you feel pretty good about the long-term look of the offense, assuming that the runners in scoring position metrics progress to the norm. I just like having Acuna on base before those guys come up and let them work with a guy who is kind of an anchor to the bottom or the bottom third of the lineup right now.
Yeah, again, I don't know if I love it, but if you're going to put Marte there, I think Acuna is a better version of Marte to put in that spot.
Yeah, I agree.
So
you can't do Alvarez, you can't do Beatty. I don't think
you don't want to do McNeil's another candidate, but do you want lefty so that in the late stage they bring in a lefty reliever, and now you don't want to take the bat out of McNeil's hands or Soto's hands in that spot, right? Yeah. So that's where you can go lefty at first with Lindor. You get your right-handed hitter in Acuna in 2, and then you get Soto 3, Alonso 4. You go switch left, right, left, and you feel a little bit better about the way things set up. So again, I don't know if it's what I would want. I think I would rather just have Soto and Alonso back in the 2-3 spot, but if you're going to do this, if you're going to move these guys down and you need a new number 2 hitter, it should not be Starling Marte. I would much rather give the extra at-bat throughout the course of the game to Luis Angel Acuna than I would Starling Marte. And for those of you, I can already hear the people talking about this. I pulled the numbers. Luis Angel Acuna has a 7% walk rate this season and a 19.5% strikeout rate. So for all of you worried about his strikeouts, Starling Marte, 7.5% walk rate, 18.3% strikeout rate. So it's not that much worse to put Acuna in that spot. And there's more speed. Acuna is stealing way more bases than Marte is. Acuna is beating out infield hits at a way better clip than Marte would. So if you're going to do this, I think it should be Acuna over Marte. That's just...
I would agree. I think the ideal lineup, weirdly, is the one that we criticized early or in the end of the preseason and early in the regular season.
Yes.
I think once Soto figures out what he's doing as a Met, and once Alonso looks more like he did in the earlier parts of the season, I love that Lindor, Soto, Alonso top 3, and then figure out Vientos or Nimmo as the cleanup batter. But long term, I think that is the correct solution for what this offense will look like come August, September.
And here's the other thing too, right? Whoever you put in front of Soto is going to get more pitches to hit, in theory, right? Because they're going to want to make sure that they get that guy, especially if Lindor makes a quick out. You want 2 quick outs when you face Soto. You do not want Soto to get an at-bat with runners in scoring position or runners on base. So Acuna's going to see more pitches to hit. And we know if it's in the zone, he's got a really good command of that strike zone and being able to put the ball in play. Yeah. So again, if you're going to do this, if you're going to move Soto out of the 2 spot permanently, or at least for an extended period of time, please make it Luis Angel Acuna in that 2 spot, please. Let's have the Juan Soto conversation, because hustle has been a conversation. Private jets have been a conversation. Whether or not he actually wants to be a Met is a conversation. All of that since his return to Yankee Stadium. Jack's just shaking his head at me. Listen, that's what people were saying. I'm not saying it. People were saying it.
I'm not.
People were saying that Juan Soto flew on a private jet away from the rest of his team. Other people said that Juan Soto didn't actually want to be a Met, that his family pushed him to be a Met, that he wanted to be a Yankee. People said this. I didn't say this. People, well-respected people, previously well-respected. I don't know how well-respected they are after this nonsense, but well-respected people previously said these things.
I'll just say, Chris, I was not shaking my head to you. I was shaking my head at all of these ridiculous ideas. I mean, can we put a name to these words? I'm willing to throw the name out there and put a certain booth commentator under the bus, but maybe I won't. I'll just say that
radio host in New York on blast, perhaps.
Yes.
Okay.
Whoever that may be. I feel like since the Yankee series, I've been reading things that make me feel like I'm the one that's crazy and they're not living in the fantasy land that they are.
If Juan Soto didn't want to be a New York Met, he would not be a New York Met.
Right.
The fact that Jeff Passan had to come out and say, yeah, no, he's not flying on a private jet is absurd. It is ridiculous that was even thrown out there. And you know what? I saw the story. I think it was Bob Clappish who wrote the story about Soto not wanting to meet with the media, not wanting to do the ESPN interview. You know what? If I was Juan Soto and I was struggling as a baseball player and I just got paid $765 million, it was my first series back in New York, and I agreed to be mic'd up. And then I started to get this feeling of, you know what? They're just going to ask me about Aaron Judge. They're just going to ask me about leaving the Yankees. This is not what I need to be focusing on right now because I'm struggling at the plate. I am going through it. I am battling it right now offensively. So you know what? I'm not going to feed this nonsense. Good for Juan Soto. That's exactly what he should have done. He doesn't owe ESPN anything. He does not owe them putting the microphone on because you knew what the questions were going to be. You knew what they were going to make it about. They were going to make it about the Yankees and being back at Yankee Stadium. Guess what? When Juan Soto stepped in for his first at bat and he jokingly took off his helmet and showed it off to the fans, that was it. That was the moment. He was good. He was ready to move past it. And so can Juan Soto hustle more? Should he have hustled more on that ground ball in Yankee Stadium? Should he have been standing on second base with the single that he hit off of the Green Monster? Absolutely. But here is the other part of this that I think is really, really important. If Juan Soto was hitting 285, 300, and he was hitting 15 home runs, and he was driving in a bunch of RBIs, nobody would care that he didn't hustle out a ground out. Nobody would care. We would raise an eyebrow and be like, dude, why aren't you on second base? But nobody would care. This was just piling on an already bad situation for Juan because he was struggling at the plate. And everybody goes, dude, you're struggling. Can you at least hustle? And yes, from an optic perspective, he should hustle. But to act like this is the first time in Juan Soto's career that he didn't hustle out a ground ball, hit to the second baseman, or for the first time in his career, he hit a ball off the green monster and was stuck at first base. You've been living under a rock, man. Some players do this. Some players just don't run out every single ground ball. Would I like them to? Yeah. But is Juan Soto going to change and all of a sudden hustle it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
It's just, I mean, you said it, Chris, like it's just piling on a situation that's already tenuous, I guess. Like there's just the fact that Soto's been struggling is the story, and everything else is just the added noise of playing in a New York market. That is, let's call a spade, because like you said, if any of those struggles were not happening, if he were hitting the home runs that we thought and knocking in the runners in scoring position that we have established now that he's not been doing so far this season, this wouldn't be a story. And I like the point that you made about Soto having his moment at Yankee Stadium in the first game of the series with his first at bat, addressing the fans, going out to right field, and all bleacher creatures had their backs turned. Very melodramatic,
Sure.
Very Mets Yankees, very Subway Series.
It was fun. It was great. That's what you want. You want there to be this rivalry. You want there to be this back and forth. I loved it. It was great.
Yes, exactly. But to echo your point, like the fact that the Sunday Night Baseball game on ESPN was going to be the series finale, which was already a rubber match, right? Because of the split of the first two games, already it would just have reignited, I guess, like Soto having to think about the Mets Yankees thing that he had gotten over in the first game of the series, because we've watched these ESPN broadcasts. They don't have good questions for a player because they're not watching these players all year. They're just interested in the national storylines for, the national audience, which is fair. But all of the questions, like you said, were going to be about Aaron Judge, going to be about what it was like to go back to Yankee Stadium, what he thought about the reception from the fans in the first two games. If he missed playing in the Bronx, like ridiculous questions that were just going to add on to this weird mental situation that he's already battling because of his struggles at this point of the season. And I'm just going to say it until I'm blue in the face, I guess, but I'm not worried about Juan Soto.
No,
there are 15
not at all.
more years, 14 and 2/3 more years of Soto in a Mets uniform. And he is going to be the Hall of Fame level player that we have seen him be for the first 7 years of his career. Just because things are not going so well right now doesn't mean they're not going to be better in the future. I can't wait for the Subway Series for the next 14 years, because I think the back and forth, the animosity between the two teams, the rivalry between the fans is so much fun to watch. Soto is such a fun element of that. And to overreact based off of one series in the first year of a 15-year contract is simultaneously so typical Mets fan, but also such a ridiculous overreaction that we can't play into it too much.
Also, to think that Juan Soto is just dogging it on purpose, that Juan Soto collect the money and now doesn't care, it's just absurd. It's absurd. It is an absurd it's just an absurd concept that the moment the player gets paid, he's just going to cash in. Juan Soto has said over and over and over again, he wants to be the greatest hitter to ever play the game of baseball. He already, by age 26, has all these great metrics. He's already on pace to do all these great things. But did you see what I said there? On pace. He has to continue to do what he is doing in order to be that person. And there is a drive. There is a commitment to be that. He's struggling right now. It happens. It happens. Let's finish with this, because I think while Jack was gone, we went through the full circle of the Tyler McGill experience. It was the full thing happened while Jack was gone. Great April. We're back. We're back in on Tyler McGill. Here we go.
The calendar
Big season
turns.
incoming. The calendar becomes May, and he becomes a pumpkin. He becomes the pumpkin in Charlie Brown. It's insane what happens. And then he struggles in May, and then you're done. You're like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. This is my bottom line. And then he does what he did last night, where through the first 4 innings, he strikes out 10, and he's just peppering in fastballs, and he's just being Tyler McGill. And then you stop, and you're like, well, wait a second. Perhaps Tyler McGill is back. The full Tyler McGill experience while you were on vacation, Jack. The full one. We've gone full circle, and you know what? I'm ready to make a declaration today. I'm ready.
I am fascinated to hear what this declaration is going to be. I texted you yesterday. We're recording this on Thursday, so I texted you the day of the series finale with the Red Sox.
Yes, you were
right
you were ready.
Game.
You were ready. You had the pitchfork out. You were ready to go. You were ready for today's pod.
Paul Blackburn had pitched excellently as he continues to make some recovery starts in AAA for the Syracuse Mets. He had an excellent start for Syracuse. I said to Chris, if McGill struggles in this start against the Red Sox, that's it. I'm ready to get off the McGill roller coaster because I'm tired of buying into the hype for a month and a half. And then as soon as the calendar hits May, it's like clockwork, Chris. As soon as the calendar hits May, all of a sudden things blow up in his face. And then, like you said, he pulls me right back in.
Pulls you back in. Pulls you right back in. 10 strikeouts over the first 4 innings, tying a career high. And then he leaves.
He could have gone deeper in the game, too.
I know. The fifth inning got sideways on him. He made a poor play, a bad read on that ball right in front of him. And then he hits a ball that Lindor knocks down, but is unable to make the play. And then he hits a batter, and then just the wheels fall off. And then Carlos Mendoza, rightfully so, has a quick hook because he's like, my offense can't score runs right now. I can't give up a big inning here because we're never winning if that's the case. So I thought I actually made the right decision. I am ready to make a declaration today. Okay. I am removing myself from the Tyler McGill experience. I'm done. I'm good. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not when he pitches well, maybe in his next start, or he pitches well in June or July and August. I'm not buying back in. I'm good. If somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And Tyler McGill has shown us over and over and over again, he is an inconsistent pitcher. And so I'm not doing it. I am removing myself. I'm on I don't know if they still do this, but on the city buses, you could always pull the little ripcord. When you wanted to get off the bus, I'm pulling the ripcord. I'm asking the bus driver to pull over, and I'm getting off the bus. I'm sorry, Tyler. I've been with you for too long. I can't do it anymore. I will not do it to myself.
You're going to take all of that back when in August and September he has an ERA that's below 1.0.
I'm not doing it.
50 strikeouts in 10 innings.
No, this is I've got Brandon Sproat to focus on.
That does not work, by the way.
I've got Jonah.
10 innings is not possible.
I've got Jonah Tong to focus on. I've got other prospects to give my energy to. I've got our ace Clay Holmes. I got way too many other things right now.
I mean, speaking of pitchers to give our energy to right now, can we flip to the bullpen for a quick moment here and acknowledge the leader, the top rung of the trust tree?
Thank you. I was going to ask if we put him up there. He belonged. Huascar Brazoban, a rung all to himself.
I mean, when we were talking at the end of the preseason about what we expected the roster to look like for opening day, Huascar Brazoban was man 25 or 26 on that roster.
Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I have my.
We had debates about whether or not he would even make the opening day roster because of guys like Max Kranick and Tyler Zuber, I believe at the time, doing really well in spring training.
Huascar Brazoban not on my 26. I have my list here. I have my list. He did not make the 26. I think there was an injury question at the time, so we were like, you know what, keep him off. Keep him off the list.
Yeah. So I think he was my last guy on the list. I think I kept off Danny Young, who you included because of the lefty thing.
Well, remember, I included Max Kranick.
You included Max Kranick, which was obviously the right call.
I had Danny Young on there. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, Danny Young and Huascar Brazoban both ended up making the opening day roster. But point being, we did not expect much from Huascar Brazoban coming into the 2025 season. And the way he has been pitching of late, including yesterday in relief of Tyler McGill, has been unbelievable in terms of coming in a horrible bases loaded situation in the 5th inning and getting out of it. Generally just cleanup services for the whole year, regardless of the time of the game, whether it's in the middle of the game, whether it's late in the game.
That's what makes him elite. That's what puts him on a different rung, better than everybody else, because it's any situation. Needs to come in the 4th or 5th inning to give you 2 innings. I can do that. You need me to be the setup guy tonight. I can do that. You need me to be the closer because Edwin Diaz and Ryan Stanek is blowing up and just giving away leads and Edwin Diaz isn't available. I can be that too. He's just been everything for this team this season. And he's got a sub-1 ERA. I had somebody ask me during the postcast that I do for the Locked On Mets stuff. Somebody asked me, is Brazoban an all-star? And I'm like, probably not, just because of the way this stuff works, but statistically he is.
He's an all-star to us.
Statistically, hashtag our all-star. Hashtag our all-star Huascar Brazoban. He has been just elite. Like that's the word that he's just been excellent, and it doesn't matter. And I think at the start of the season, if you asked me my feeling, like if I had, when they do those focus groups during like presidential debates, not to get political, but then people be like, oh, I like that statement, I don't like that statement.
Right.
If you had me do that based on who was coming out for the Mets bullpen, I think at the beginning of the season when Brazoban came out, I'd be like, I'm not a fan, I'm nervous, I don't like it. Now it's like, bring it on. When he's out there warming up, I'm like, great. 3 free outs. Thanks very much.
3 7
6,
free outs,
7, whatever
like,
it needs to be.
he
Yeah,
pitched 2 1/3 yesterday.
Yeah, 2 1/3 scoreless. Yep, 2 1/3 scoreless.
I mean, like, that's the kind of thing that we expected to see from like a Daniel Nunez, who came up, struggled, and has sent back down in the time since I've been gone. But like, to have
That's
him
right.
step up
That's
the way
right.
he has,
I just realized that you have not had a chance to discuss anything about
I
Daniel
know.
Nunez. I just realized it.
Yeah,
That you missed the whole thing.
Me, who had been championing the Nunez cause for like months.
Dude, he came into the first game against the Diamondbacks and just couldn't throw a strike. And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
What's happening?
But we have Oscar Brazaban now, our all-star and savior.
And then his next outing, Carlos uses him in like the 8th inning of a game. And I'm like, Carlos, what are you doing, dude? He can't get an out.
Yeah, it was like walk, hit a guy. It was ridiculous.
He had like his first 3 outings of the season. I don't think finished an inning, but didn't allow a hit. Like, it was just command issues all over the place. It was bad. Yes, I want to touch more on Huascar Brazaban. I'm trying to pull up his numbers for the season because they've just been excellent. But where is he? He's pitched 30 innings this season. He started 2 games. Remember, we've had Huascar Brazaban the opener a couple of times this season.
I think Chris I think the 3rd inning might be the only inning he hasn't pitched in. Maybe the 3rd and the 4th.
All right, so now
I don't know. I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but
hold on.
I know he's pitched the 9th. We know after yesterday he's pitched the 5th, 6th, and 7th. I'm very confident he's pitched the 8th. We know he's pitched the 1st and the 2nd.
I don't know. I don't know if Baseball Reference is going to have this. Yeah. They're the place I think is going to have it, if anybody's going to have it. What an interesting question. What innings has Huascar Brazaban not pitched in this season? Let me see. Let me look at that.
Just kind of plays into the jack of all trades role that he's been able to take on with this bullpen, and part of why he's been so valuable, not just because of the ERA, which has been obviously phenomenal and part of the reason that he's so high on our trust tree now, but the fact that he's able to do it at any point in the game with the bases empty, bases loaded, doesn't matter, and shut things down has been incredible.
Okay. Huascar Brazaban has pitched in the 1st inning, the 2nd inning, the 5th inning, the 6th inning, the 7th inning, the 8th inning, the 9th inning, and has 1 appearance in extra innings this season. So the 3rd and the 4th inning are the only 2 innings that Huascar Brazaban has not pitched in this season.
All we need is 1 blow-up start from...
Well, I don't know if we should root for that.
I'm not going to root for that, but...
The next time it happens...
the full 9.
The next time it happens, it's going to be the Leonardo DiCaprio meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where everyone's going to be pointing at the TV like, get him in there. Get him in there in the 3rd and the 4th. Check off the boxes. He has been awesome. He has a .93 ERA in innings 4 through 6 this season, and he has a 1.08 ERA in innings 7 through 9.
Chris, that'll play.
That'll play. And that's going to do it for us here on what has been a fun edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. See, even though the team's not playing well, we can still have fun. We can still have a good time talking about our baseball team. We will be back after the series with the Dodgers, the first time that we are seeing this Dodgers team since the NLCS from a year ago. The Dodgers come in off of a series win against the Diamondbacks. They took 2 out of 3. Didn't look super impressive. Didn't score a ton of runs in those games. Had an extra inning win against the Diamondbacks bullpen, and then had 1 home run last night, a 3-run home run that allowed them to win. My day job covering the Diamondbacks, I've been watching these games pretty closely. But it will be, I believe Griffin Canning is first up for the Mets this weekend. I have the pitching matchups here. If you will just give me 1 second to push a couple of buttons. It is Griffin Canning against Clayton Kershaw on Friday. It is David Peterson against Tony Gonsolin on Saturday. And then it is Kodai Senga versus Landon Knack on Sunday, before a nice soft spot in the schedule for the Mets comes up. 6 games against the White Sox and Rockies. So
yeah, it's an interesting situation for both the Mets and the Dodgers right now, because both of them are near the top of the National League, but both of them had kind of weird back-to-back series. The Dodgers just got swept by the Angels in their rivalry weekend series.
Yeah. Lost the first game against the Diamondbacks. They were on a 4-game losing streak before winning these last 2. They've been dealing with a ton of pitcher injuries.
Kershaw has been not
one start, an 11 ERA. Yeah, it wasn't great for him at that first time.
Opportunity for both these teams to kind of prove that they are the teams that we think they are. And like you said, it's a tough one before a little bit of an easier couple of series coming up after that.
Yeah, what a huge boon it would be for this team if they found a way to take 2 out of 3 this weekend, with what you expect to be a bunch of wins coming at home against Chicago and Colorado. Like if you can take 2 out of 3, now all of a sudden, yeah, they did just lose 3 in a row. Yeah, they've been struggling, but they might start rattling off some because they play the Dodgers, I think, on the other side of Colorado.
Yes.
So they can really kind of gain some ground. So if you win 2 out of 3 this weekend, you win the series against the Dodgers, boy, sets up for a pretty fun week here. So we're back Sunday night to break everything down here when the Mets finish up against the Dodgers. In the meantime, subscribe to us on YouTube, Jack McKessy, McKessy. The video versions of the show are back. If you're listening to us in the podcast feed, please rate, review, subscribe to the show. We would greatly appreciate that. And we will talk to you guys after the Mets finish up their series against the Dodgers. As always, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.